This beefcake is a 2017 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, which now features a Hemi V8 swap under the hood, which was since further upgraded, and that's just a drop in the pond. As you can tell from looking at this beast, it has tens of thousands of dollars in upgrades and parts, which were actually professionally installed and documented by Amercan Off-Road Customs in Las Vegas. This Jeep is also for sale. You can find it heading up for auction on Bring a Trailer, where it will be selling with no reserve as offered from Casio Motors. Under the hood, the Pentastar V6 was swapped out in favor of a 5.7-liter Hemi V8, which would have been rated from the factory for about 345 horsepower. But they didn't stop there. They then spent over $6,000 in additional upgrades just in parts for that Hemi V8. They added things like a performance camshaft, a ported throttle body. We also had the 6.4 or 392 intake manifold upgrade kit, in addition to a custom cold air intake and even custom long tube headers, which then feed into an AWE exhaust with MagnaFlow resonators. In addition to that, in the engine bay here, you can see that all of the additional wiring that's been added to support all of the additional lights and other electronic upgrades in this particular vehicle can also be found, where everything has been professionally insulated and wrapped and stored in a way that is all correct to make sure that all of the upgrades work as they should in this vehicle. The other benefit of course, doing this swap and adding an additional 2 cylinders to this Jeep and a lot more power is that it sounds fantastic too. Take a listen. Now let's take a closer look at the exterior and then we'll see what's going on underneath. Now the cool part is when it comes to the exterior, obviously this thing looks very, very aggressive, but all of the mods you see here, not only are they all made of metal or LED lights, but they're all functional as well. And a lot of them are of course intentional to compensate for all of the upgrades underneath for the suspension. With that, let's go ahead and dive into it. The first one here being this awesome front bumper. And not only should this help with your approach angle and of course be very robust, but it itself maintains all sorts of cool features. As you can see here, you have these lights on the outside, you also have some tow hooks, but additionally this shorty light bar, and perhaps most importantly a 10,000-pound worn winch to help yourself out in a sticky situation, or maybe even help your buddies out of a sticky situation. As is common with a lot of Jeeps, the grille was also upgraded. You also have the sort of mean eyes look to it now, which looks more aggressive. The smoked out turn signals and even these back grille pieces were also replaced, which kind of fits the overall theme on this particular Jeep. As you come around to the side here, the hood latches themselves have also been upgraded, which looks nice with our very aggressive power bulge hood. And then as you take a look at the side here, you can see our very cool aluminum tubular style fenders, which of course add a lot of ground clearance, but also just help again with all of those off-road upgrades, and also integrate these very cool low-key side markers. Underneath, the fender liners themselves have also been upgraded, as you can see, a necessary mod. But then the really cool part, the wheel and tire combo along with their supporting mods on this Jeep are just epic. First of all, we have these 20-inch KMC wheels, which are beadlocks. As you can see, they look very, very nice. I especially like the finish and the face of the wheel, but then they're wrapped in these massive Maxxis 40-inch tires, which are awesome. They have lots of sidewall protection in addition to lots of tread life left, as you can see here. The other cool part, and you may have noticed this already, is the fact that this Jeep is also now an 8-lug conversion, as you can see, and it also has these massive TerraFlex big brake kit, and those are 4-piston calipers now. But the cool part is it's not just the front. That all of that was applied there, the 8 lugs and the TerraFlex big brake kit, can also be found here in the rear. And all of that helps with off-roading, obviously stopping on the side of a 45-degree rock, for example, or even bringing that big Hemi V8 under the hood to a stop. So very important upgrades there for just the robustness of this Jeep. Furthermore, we have a shorty antenna. The mirrors themselves now have these integrated lights. You have some cool pod lights here on the side that are part of this very cool metal bracket that runs all the way to the top, and then has this killer light pod bar that goes all the way across. And of course, currently they don't have their light covers on them if you wanted that look, but they're all very functional and make it easier to do more at night, whether that's camping or off-roading. Next, you may have noticed this bar down below. Well, that is a power amp research step. And what's cool is it's integrated with the door. So when we open the door, the step automatically drops down, which is a nice touch. And same thing when the door is shut, It will actually raise itself back up to make it out of the way, and again, just improving overall performance. As you come back to the rear here, similar thing with the aluminum fenders here in the back that look very aggressive, wheel and tire combo, and even the rough country fender liners that you see in there. As you come to the rear of the vehicle, a lot more changes. Similar setup with a nice solid metal bumper in the back, hopefully improving our departure angles. But then you can see that itself has all sorts of integrated features similar to the front, including a drop hitch. And then you can even see the very aggressive quad exit for our exhaust. Furthermore, you can see the antennas here on the back, in addition to this nice solid swing arm aluminum tire carrier. The reason this is important is obviously this is now running a very serious wheel and tire package that won't fit on the factory settings, so you have to add something like this. So now we have a full-size KMC wheel and tire that we can swap out on the trail should something happen. And furthermore, we actually integrated, of course, these awesome cameras that make it so you retain your factory functionality and can still drive this thing around, and that'll definitely come in handy when you're on the trail and potentially need to back up. With that, let's take a look underneath. When it comes to underneath for this Jeep, you essentially can say in short that you have the entire TerraFlex catalog and then some. As you can see here in the front, for example, you have these Fox steering stabilizers, and that's not all. It's going to be fairly hard to distinguish some of this, but as you take a closer look, you can see that even the axle has actually had all of the Artec armoring axle components added onto it, and that includes things like this piece here to help slide should the axle actually get high centered on anything, which is pretty unlikely, but in the event that it does happen, you're prepared for it. As you take a look here in the wheel well, everything looks very, very aggressive, and you can get a nice look at that big brake kit as well. The track arms have been upgraded. As you can see here, the coil springs have also been upgraded, and everything's been lifted up as well. And you can see they've also powder coated the coil springs for a nice cosmetic touch. But then you also see the TerraFlex Falcon Series 3 adjustable shocks, also a nice upgrade as well. As you come back to the center of the vehicle, you can now see the short arms here as part of that TerraFlex Alpine suspension. Again, everything upgraded as well. The other thing that might be a little bit harder to see is they also actually upgraded the drive shafts, both the front and rear drive shaft for the actual drivetrain suspension components, which is a nice touch for this vehicle. Obviously now the fact that it's got a Hemi V8 in it, supporting mods like that really do go a long ways. Coming back to the rear here, you'll find more of that same Falcon shock suspension. You can see it's also got the adjustments in the external reservoirs, and you can see all of these crazy upgrades going on underneath the vehicle. It's hard to appreciate everything that's actually been done to it until you really start looking at it. I love all the attention to detail. For example, even these extra pieces here that exist purely to help protect the shock on this Jeep. Lots of proper upgrades, all in the name of overall performance while off-roading in this particular vehicle. It includes things that make it more robust, but also improving overall clearance with, I believe, a total of around 6 inches of lift on this particular Jeep, also aided by the fact that you have this massive wheel and tire package. Taking a closer look at the interior, obviously this looks like a Jeep, but there are quite a few different changes. My favorite is actually this up here. This is this awesome light panel that they put together, essentially your switchboard for all of the modifications now on the outside of the vehicle, things like the lights, the winch, and you can even see your horn controllers, and even the air compressor controllers. All very cool that they integrated that. It looks very, very professional, like something that would have come from Jeep, but instead is just very heavily modified and done professionally in this case, and that's a nice touch. The next thing I want to talk about though is what you can't see, and that's actually what they've done underneath. You see, in this particular Jeep, they actually pulled out all of the carpets, and so what they did is they instead put new sound deadening underneath. The sound inside and how noisy these can be is one of the biggest Jeep complaints, I'd say, and so they came out to actually address that and fix that on this particular Jeep, adding sound deadening in the floors themselves, in the doors, and then furthermore on the inside here also adding a mat on top just to try and help with overall sound deadening on this particular Jeep, and so that is a great upgrade. The other thing while we're here in the back that I want to show you that's also an upgrade is this bad boy right here. This is the Amercan sound bar, which was added in addition to the factory Alpine sound system, and while you might be thinking you don't need something like this, when the door's on, sure, the factory sound system is probably fine, but the minute the doors or the roof comes off or you're camping and you want to blast music, this comes in handy. The sound dissipates rather quickly the minute you start reducing the actual doors and roof panels on this vehicle, and so this will help overpower that so you can still rock out to your tunes wherever you are, whether that be outside off-roading or camping, whatever the case is. Additionally, you might notice some of the other upgrades. You can see that there are a variety of additional handles from rough country, in addition to the sort of factory style handles that go throughout the actual roll bar and cage on the vehicle to just help everybody hold themselves in place better so you can off-road with the whole family, because after all, this Jeep seats a total of 5. With that, let's go back to the front and we can take a closer look at some of the upgrades up here. You can see some of the things like the switch controllers have been swapped out, adjustable steering column, but for the most part, a lot of this looks pretty proper and normal. With that, we can go ahead and climb in and we could start it up and see what all we've got going on, which here is the key, and you also have the remote start functionality of it, which is just awesome. And then you go ahead and start it up here, and you can see the V8 roar to life. The other thing that I'd like to bring your attention to, though, is also the pedal commander box that you see here. What that is that it's something that'll help control the sort of throttle and just pedal sensitivity in this vehicle, just to improve the overall driving characteristics. With that, right in front of you is classic Jeep here. This is all correct from the factory in terms of your steering wheel controls and functionality, your cruise control, your digital displays in terms of your gauges, and just being able to mess with everything. And then over here in the center, again, classic with the infotainment system, your air conditioning, which blows ice cold, your actual power window controls here, your air conditioning or climate controls are located below, and then you also have things like your heated seats, which you can see here, your power mirror adjustments, and then also traction control. You also have the downhill assist buttons, all that type of stuff's located down below. But then more importantly, right here, you have the shifter here for our 5-speed automatic transmission, which if we put it into reverse, even though it's been moved around from the factory setting, as you can see, is still nice and visible there so you can see behind you. Additionally, you'll find the shifter here for 4-wheel drive. Now this is a part-time system, which means currently it's 2-wheel drive for normal driving with the option to shift it into 4 high, and you also have 4 low while off-roading. Furthermore, you have some cup holders, a physical parking brake, and a nice little storage box here. So basically what they've done here is they've addressed the biggest complaints of any Jeep, which includes the sound deadening. That's been improved. They then added some additional carrying handles or support handles, let's say, so you can hold yourself in while off-roading, and that goes for your passengers too. But then they also added the necessary professional supporting mods like this light bar here, and then in things to improve overall quality of life, like a bigger sound system. Who doesn't love those types of upgrades while maintaining a lot of the factory functionality? All right, what's it like to drive this 5.7 Hemi Swapped Jeep? Well, the first one is you now get V8 noises when you drive it. And not only is that a standard 5.7, but it's actually modified now. So we have, of course, that performance camshaft to get a nice lopey idle of sorts. And then you pair that with the custom long tube headers, AWE exhaust, and MagnaFlow resonators, and you have yourself quite a great sounding exhaust system. The other part I like is that it's not obnoxious in this car by any means. It just has a very nice tone to it as you go along and drive in it. It's very soothing to speak. And so with that, I've gone ahead and disconnected some of the personal mics so that you guys can get a little bit more audio sort of intake of everything that's going on the inside of this Jeep. Now, in terms of the driving characteristics, the other thing I want you to notice is just how quiet this is. At the moment, as we're driving on the road, you don't hear anything outside of the exhaust. And that's not because the exhaust is loud, but there's a lot of extra mats on the inside of this, all that sound deadening that I talked about earlier, both in the doors and the floors themselves, to just improve the overall driving characteristics of this vehicle. These are usually quite loud vehicles, especially once you start putting all sorts of off-road suspension wheels and tires like on this one, but this one's very quiet at the moment. And that is a nice welcome upgrade, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. Ooh, lots more power. This thing is way faster with the Hemi under the hood. The other additional part is you would think that there's a lot of body roll in this, and there's actually not that much. It feels very tight. Usually with off-road vehicles, sometimes they can wander a lot, and some of that is going to be totally hard to just get rid of entirely, but this one feels very, very smooth. You can comfortably drive this on any road, and it doesn't feel like too much, let's say. It does still have nice and easy steering thanks to those Fox steering stabilizers that are also underneath it, But the other thing you'll notice is just how high you are. If you really like sitting up high and getting that good visibility, obviously some of that can help in off-roading trails, especially with the ground clearance, but also it feels like you're just looking down at anybody when you drive this thing. It's kind of funny. You just see the roofs of everybody's vehicles as you're driving around. You also have those big brakes now installed in this vehicle as well to bring it to a stop, because some of this heavy-duty off-road suspension does admittedly add some weight, and so with that you have a better system as a whole, a little bit more weight in the vehicle with the sound deadening off-road suspension, but then you counter that by putting in that bigger engine that's now in here. And so overall you have what is essentially an entirely new vehicle. It might look like a Jeep on the outside, but underneath everything's been heavily modified, and then under the hood especially with that modified 5.7-liter Hemi V8. So with that, you have quite the interesting experience here for what is a proper ready-to-go off-roader that needs nothing. Everything as it sits here is just ready to be used. I should also mention that obviously now as we're driving around town, it's currently in two-wheel drive because it's a part-time transfer case, but it is four-wheel drive. So should you want to go rock crawling, that is not a problem here. Take it on trail roads, whatever the case is, no problem for this thing. And I think this thing is so capable that you would be hard-pressed, unless you're actually climbing boulders, that you would really need the four-wheel drive system. I have a feeling even in snowy environments, you wouldn't necessarily immediately need to use the 4-high. I think with these wheels and tires and the current setup on the vehicle, you're probably just fine in most conditions, leaving it in two-wheel drive and only putting it in four-wheel drive when you really need it. All in all, I also want to remind you that you also have the sound system. So this thing's already incredibly quiet on the inside, but you also have the sound system that could also pump up whatever you wanted to listen to inside the vehicle, with both the factory Alpine system and the aftermarket soundbar that now sits here in the middle of the Jeep, which means everybody gets to listen to it, not just the front, but also the folks in the back of the Jeep as well. So that just provides a fantastic overall listening experience. The cool part is too, is as you're sitting here at the helm of this particular Jeep, you also get to see some of the upgrades, right? The power bulge hood is a cool one to see, but then also just the lighting kits and all that are all very prominent and right in front of you as far as the overall functionality. The easy grips for just driving this vehicle in terms of holding on in the event of a rocky situation. It's all quite nice in terms of the overall functionality. It's cool to see that it retains everything, the infotainment system, the modern luxuries that we know and love, things like your ice-cold air conditioning, the backup cameras, while still having just infinitely more off-road capabilities. That's really what this thing is all about, just simple upgrades without getting rid of the things that make sense in a vehicle like this, so it's still approachable as a daily driver while being more functional off-road. Now with that, this is the point where I remind you that this Jeep, with all of its awesome off-road upgrades, is for sale. You can find it heading up for auction on Bring a Trailer, where it will be selling with no reserve as offered from Casio Motors. With that, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. And of course, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.